After probably about a week of really fierce storms, rain, wind, a day has actually dawned that I can get outside and start doing some actual gardening. And now that we're in late February, in my climate, we can start sowing a lot of seeds. And they include lots of greens, also sweet peas, but what they all have in common is that they either will germinate under low temperatures or will benefit from being sown under cover, such as in a greenhouse. And so today I'm going to be sowing some of the very first seeds of the year. But first off, I need to do a deep clean of the greenhouse. The greenhouse is absolutely sparkling, and I got rid of a lot of plants that didn't make it over the winter, also lots of pests, and it's just so much tidier, and I can understand where I am with the plants and everything. I have everything in here from sweet peas that I sowed last autumn, and I've pinched out the growing tips, and that will help the plants to get a little bit bushier. There's also quite a few different plants in here that I've been overwintering, including scented geraniums, rose geraniums, in the pallet planters, which I also have tutorials for making, both the simple one over there, and then this is a strawberry pallet planter that I've commandeered for the greenhouse. This is a type of kale called Uncle Bert's Purple. You can also get a type called Red Russian that's similar. I have some spring cabbage that I've tucked in there. This over here is an upcoming video. These are the last of the bare root hedgerow shrubs, and I have them in here covered up with some compost. And they're going to be planted out very soon after we get that bank sorted. And then also I have my autumn sown peas up here, and they desperately need to be planted outside. And now that the worst of the weather, I hope, is over, then I can get these out. This is a type called Meteor, and it's suitable for autumn sowing. So that was, I believe, last October that I sowed the seeds. And these have a head start on any of the seeds that I'll begin sowing in March. There is nothing quite like doing a full deep clean of the greenhouse right at the beginning of the growing year, and it has become quite the ritual of mine and has a lot of benefits, because cleaning the glass inside and out with eco-friendly products at the floor and trying to find as many slugs and snails and pests as possible, also anything that looks slimy or like disease or rot, removing all of that creates a really nice, safe, clean environment for you to raise your seedlings. And if you can remove as much of that as possible, your seedlings will likely be a lot healthier. It also allows a lot more light into your greenhouse. I have a full video showing how I washed the entire greenhouse if you want to watch that next. Now, it's a little bit early for me to be sowing seeds here in the greenhouse because nighttime temperatures aren't quite warm enough, and they need to be about 7 degrees Celsius, so 45 degrees Fahrenheit, for me to really feel like I can leave my little seedlings out here at night and they won't get stunted in their growth and they won't be set back. But I do a lot of sowing undercover in the house, and I'm going to be doing some of that today as well and showing you a bit of the compost that I use, some of the seeds I'm sowing, my seed sowing schedule, including my little black book, which we'll get to in a bit. But first, let me take you inside the house and I'll show you my seed starting setup, including my grow lights. I have a few house plants and also outdoor plants that I'm overwintering here in the house. This is our dining area. And then going into our kitchen, this is my main setup currently for starting seeds indoors and growing them on. And this is just the start. There's another grow light that's in that box right there, and I'm going to get that hooked up just as soon as it's needed, which is very soon. I start seeds that need heat in this electric propagator, and it gives a bottom heat, a nice gentle bottom heat under there of about 21 degrees Celsius. So that's about 70 Fahrenheit. And these little propagator lids here keep the moisture in. And as soon as seeds germinate, like here, you can see this padron chili has propagated, then I move it up here immediately under grow lights. And it's joining its other two friends there, the padron chilies. And seedlings need intense warm heat, especially heat-loving plants like chilies and like these eggplants over here. Eggplants, and there's also some sweet chilies in there as well. These here are loofah. I'm growing them for the first time this year. They will be going out in the polytunnel just as soon as the polytunnel is built. And then down here, these are seeds that don't need bottom heat to germinate, but they do appreciate a nice room temperature to start growing. And I sowed these just a couple of days ago. It generally takes 1 to 2 weeks for seeds to germinate. And then down below here, I have different potatoes that I'm chitting, which is a totally optional step, but I've got my seed potatoes ordered, and those little sprouts there can help to give an earlier crop with some types of potatoes, not all. This is the type of grow light that I use. I've got 2 of these, and they do use quite a bit of electricity, so I only use them when necessary for, again, heat-loving plants that really need that little extra growth at the beginning part of the year that my climate isn't able to give them naturally. And so the aubergines are feeding off of this sunlight that's coming from not only the artificial light, the grow light, but also from the side. And you'll find that a lot of people will start seedlings off in their windowsills in winter, and those seedlings get really leggy, so really tall, trying to stretch towards the window. And that's because the sunlight just isn't strong enough this time of the year. And a lot of plants really do need that supplemental light from grow lights to be able to grow properly. There are quite a few different growing mediums that you can use to start seeds. And of course, later on in the year, direct sowing straight into the soil. In the setup inside, you'll have noticed these little pots, and a lot of people will see them and immediately think that they're made out of peat, because that's what they have been made out of up until fairly recently. These are actually peat-free. They're made out of coconut husks, so coconut core, and they expand just in the same way as the older type of peat pots, but they're a lot more eco-friendly. And it actually brings into question this entire idea of, do we need nutritious soil for starting off seeds? And the fact of the matter is that it's much more important for the growing medium to be light and fluffy and to have really good drainage than for it to have very much nutrition, at least initially. Because in the seeds is all the nutrition that the seed needs to initially start growing and to develop roots. It's only after the seedling starts producing true leaves that you really need to consider adding a bit more nutrition to the mix. So these are great for starting off seeds, and this is the first time I've used them. This is the first year, and they're working a treat, and they're also very compact, so I can squish quite a few together. So a really easy way of starting seeds. But a more traditional way to start seeds is with potting mix. And in the UK, people know potting mix or potting soil as compost. So just ordinary, the word compost is both for the stuff that you make out of garden waste and also the potting mix. And so it can be a little bit confusing. Now, this is peat-free compost, so peat-free potting soil that I've mixed together with vermiculite. And vermiculite is a type of puffed up mineral rock, and what it does is it absorbs water into itself. So it helps to retain water within each granule, but it also improves drainage in that the shape of each piece allows for air pockets, and the moisture that's in the growing medium is in the vermiculite rather than in this brown potting mix. And so that's really, really good for a lot of plants, but especially seedlings. And the mix that I have here is, I would say, about 2/3 compost and 1/3 vermiculite. But you can go 50-50 if you want. You can make your own mixes. It's just, it needs to be really, really fine. And this is a little bit of a challenge with peat-free compost, is that it's made with a lot of wood particles. So you do have to spend some time breaking it up with your fingers or sieving it in some way. And then you mix it together with the vermiculite at the same time. And that's all I'm doing here. And you'll have seen in other videos that I use other types of materials too. I use perlite, I use horticultural grit. It really is just the same principle. You just want to try to get that texture right. And the fine mixture is also really important because young seedlings will have less trouble coming up through something that's really fine as opposed to something that might have clumps in it. So this is a clump of that peat-free compost here. And I'm just gonna break it up with my fingers. So it's mainly the principle of getting the right mix. And this is about 50-50 what I'm doing here compared to over here. So you can see a lot more of that vermiculite. And you can make your own mix. You don't have to follow an exact recipe. It's really just judging with experience and your fingers and knowing how seedlings have done in past mixes that you've made before. Now, I'm going to start some seeds right now, but first I want to take you through my seed sowing schedule because this is what keeps me on track and make sure that I don't forget to sow seeds. And this is part of a video that I made recently about 5 steps to planning this year's vegetable garden, and this is one of the steps. And having a calendar or a schedule of some sort will help you to stay on track as well. One of the most challenging things about growing a vegetable garden is knowing when to sow seeds, how often, and keeping on track. It's a little bit easier at the beginning part of the year when there are fewer things to sow. And so having a calendar or a schedule, no matter what you use, whether it's Excel or an app or an actual calendar, or with me, it's this year, this little black book. And what I've done is I've taken a sketchbook, so they're all blank pages if you look at the back. And then for each spread, it's a month. So January, there's very few things to sow. I've divided it into the beginning, the middle, and the end. And I've also noted how long until the last frost as well, which for us is March 31st. And then I've got notes for 2022 over here. What did I sow? When? How many days did it take until it germinated? And I can refer back to this next year and the years to come. We're now in February. It's quite a bit busier here, but still it's the very beginning of the seed sowing year. And I've sown quite a few things, not everything that I could over on this side, but I've written down over here what I have sown. And this is keeping me on track. And this is such a great way for keeping your garden on track, yourself on track, and staying less stressed about the seed sowing schedule. And it goes through to March, April gets busy, and the notes that I've put over on the side here are types of seeds or varieties that I already have, and I don't want to forget about sowing them. And it could be that I run out of space for notes and I'll just put them towards the back. But if you are worried about keeping yourself on schedule, watch my video, 5 steps to planning this year's vegetable garden, and I go through what this is and how you can use it. My seed sowing schedule is based on what I like to grow, what does grow here in my climate. And just to reintroduce you, I'm on the Isle of Man, and it is a British maritime climate here. Very mild winters, very mild summers. It's pretty much always mild here. And although technically I believe that we are zone 9A here, we do not see the same heat as people who have 9A in other parts of the world do. So northern Florida has the same, technically the same growing climate if you're going by the zone system. Although if you look at where the Isle of Man is on the map, it's the same latitude as the middle of Canada. It's all very weird. And so it can be a little bit difficult to give you recommendations as to when to grow and start seeds in your specific region. But I do have a rule of thumb, and I think that if you can understand the temperatures and the soil temperatures and your garden, then you will know when plants can survive outside. And if you know when plants can survive outside, then sow seeds when you know that you can plant the seedlings out in a month's time or around a month's time. So if it's January and you've got 3 feet of snow, and in a month's time it's now the end of February and there's still snow, then wait on sowing seeds. If you have a grow room or grow lights and you are experienced in using those, crack on. It's a lot more work to grow seedlings in such situations because there are pests, there's humidity, there's the light levels. You have to keep an eye on all of that. It's just much easier to stick to your seasons and grow plants that do well in your climate, and then stick to that rule of thumb, which means that you can still start seeds in the house or in a greenhouse, but you don't have to mollycoddle them as much because you know that in about a month's time you'll be able to start hardening them off and plant them outside. So we are going to sow some seeds today. I'm going to show you what I do to get the trays ready to be put inside and to germinate. And I've got a few things to sow today. I've got a type of spinach, it's just a beginner seed packet. It's a type called Ready. I already have Matador on the go. We love spinach here. And then I also have dill to start and parsley, flat leaf parsley. I'm bringing you closer and closer in to my seed sowing area. This is just a plastic tub, and these plastic modules I've had for years, and you get them sometimes in large sheets, and I find it really a lot easier sometimes to cut them with a pair of scissors to get them into smaller pieces, because then I could sow this entire thing with spinach. They're all ready to be planted out at the same time, and I don't have to fiddle as much with taking some plants out and leaving others in. I also have a tray to put them in afterwards, so they'll just go in here, just easier to transport them. And also I've got a propagator cover to go over the top. And these are really great if you are starting your seeds on a windowsill, or you've got cats like I do. It keeps them out of it. It creates a little bit of a greenhouse inside, and it doesn't require any electricity, so it's really effective and low cost, and you can use these from year to year to year to year. Most of what I use as far as containers are plastic because they can last a long time, and I also pick a lot of them up for free. There's an area at our local recycling center where people can leave their pots, and I pick up quite a few there. So for me, there's no real need to buy very many things from year to year. Okay, so I've got this mix here, which I need to mix a little bit better because there's chunks in here of vermiculite. So we'll just get this really well mixed. It's already quite moist, so I'm not going to add water, but if it does feel a bit dry to you when you're doing this, add water at this stage, and it's just so much easier on those seeds than sowing or adding water afterwards, because when you start watering from the top, it can really disturb the surface of that compost, and the seeds might get displaced and they might wash out, they might wash further in, might come up to the surface and dry out. So all I'm going to do is fill these modules with the mix. And I can see that there are some stones and other little bits in this peat-free potting mix. Once I have that filled, I'm going to press it all down, because we don't want these to be practically empty once they've settled. You want quite a bit of growing medium for each seed. And I have an entire video that goes through how I sow seeds and why I sow in modules, and it's called Bigger Harvests Using Fewer Seeds, and you can watch that video after this as well. And sowing in modules like this really makes the most out of a packet of seeds, and it reduces waste, and it's just easier to monitor the seedlings that are inside as well. This first module I'm going to sow with this spinach variety. It's called Ready, and normally I would sow each one of these different modules with a couple of seeds, but I don't think that I have enough. So I will first put one seed into each of these compartments, and then if I have extra, then I will double up on some of them. The depth that you sow seeds is round about 3 times the depth that the seed is. So if it's a really tiny seed, it doesn't need to go very deep. If it's large like a pea, then it goes a lot deeper. So these spinach seeds are moderately sized, and that's plenty, this depth here. And then just smooth over the top with a bit more of that compost that got pushed aside when I was making the little indentations. And then I'll finish this off by spraying the tops of this with some water. This adds a little bit more moisture to the top without moving the compost aside. If you use a watering can, you would have potting mix going everywhere. It's not very gentle. That's plenty. And then the last thing I'm going to do before popping it into this tray is put the label in. It's really important that you label your seeds. You will forget. Guaranteed. So that's ready to go. I've got one more module to sew up, and it's going to be 2 rows of the dill and 2 rows of the parsley, which I'll put in here. And then I will tuck them all inside this and bring it into the house. I hope that you have enjoyed this little look at how I'm starting the very first seeds of the year. They will no doubt be different from some of the seeds that you might sow, or the sowing times, or both, but this is how I start it, and I hope that it helps anyone who's got any questions about starting seeds undercover. Now, as I said before, I'm starting seeds in the house right now because it's a nice, warm, and consistent room temperature, not only during the day, but at night too. It's just slightly cooler, whereas it gets really cold outside still. But once it starts warming up, there's going to be a lot more seedlings, a lot more seeds being started here in my freshly cleaned greenhouse, and also in the polytunnel, which hopefully should be built within the next few weeks. Everything takes time, doesn't it? Anyway, if you've got any questions, let me know down below, and I will try my best to answer them. And let me know how your seedlings are doing too. Have you started anything yet? And do you have questions about them? Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next week here on Lovely Greens. Bye for now.